Hi everybody, so in today's video we're going to go over some common breeding problems you may have with your rabbits. I know there's the saying, breeding like rabbits, but sometimes that's not always the case. The bucks are almost always willing to breed unless they've had a bad experience with aggressive does, or they're getting older and lazier and they're not willing to chase as much. But the main problem is going to be with the does, because sometimes they're not always in the mood. And the challenging thing is that you don't want to force your does to breed, because it's not always going to work. It's just going to add stress to the doe. So it's more just figuring out why she's not in the mood and troubleshooting from there. So something you want to consider is your doe's health. Is she underweight? Is she overweight? You may even want to flip them over and kind of check the plumbing to make sure it's not red or swollen, it looks normal, and make sure that they're good on that end. Another thing to consider is your rabbit's age. Smaller breed rabbits are ready to breed more like 6 months of age. More likely, if you're watching this video, you got meat rabbits, and so you're looking at more like 8 months of age for the larger rabbits. Some people even wait longer, and I believe when it comes to bucks, they even say wait closer to a year, just so that they are fully mature and there's less risk of them getting bitten by a doe rabbit, because if they get bit and beat up, there's the possibility that they're going to be less interested in breeding from there on out. And the productive years for a rabbit, for a doe, is probably about 4 years. You got to think most rabbits are probably being bred 4 to 6 times a year. That can burn them out pretty quickly. So about 4 years is what you're going to get out of a doe. For a buck, it's probably going to be more like 5 to 6 years. A way to tell is just if you're with a buck, if it's lack of interest, they're less interested. With a doe, again, lack of interest, or she's starting to have smaller litters, or she's starting to have more failed litters where there's a lot of kits that don't make it in the litter. So those are some ways to see if your doe is just kind of done breeding. Just like chickens, rabbits do best if they have 12 to 14 hours of light. They can breed, like I have had rabbits breed in the winter. Most of the time it's a challenge. Most of the time I just give them the break for winter. And then as soon as we hit maybe March, for us, is when they start becoming more receptive. And so we just take advantage of their natural season, and we do a little bit more of an intense breeding schedule with them. And then again, once winter comes, they start losing interest. We give them a break for the winter. So that's how we do it. If you are wanting them in production more, then there's a lot of people that use artificial lighting to keep their does in the mood longer. Something else to look at is your rabbit's diet. They should have access to grass hay at all times, and then have their pellets, and ideally, if you can, some veggies and stuff each day. Some of the specific nutrients you're looking for is vitamin A and vitamin E, which can get lost through pellets if they're stored for a really long time. So you can always replace that vitamin A with some vegetables like kale, carrots, leafy greens. And then vitamin E is a good one too, and that comes from black oil sunflower seeds. So if you just do 1 to 3 tablespoons depending on the size of the rabbit each day. Apple cider vinegar has been said to work for some people. I haven't tried this too much. I think I did try to do it once, and they just don't like the flavor of the water. You're supposed to mix a tablespoon in with a gallon of water and give it to them. So you could always try that. I only lightly tried it, and they just didn't really seem to like the flavor of the water much, and I didn't really notice much of a difference. But if you want to try that one, you can. If you're more consistent with it, maybe you'll have success. Sometimes the doe just likes to get a little bit more familiar with the male she's going to be introduced to. So I've had breeders that just swap the doe and the buck, swap them cages so that they can get used to each other's scents and smells, or you can just house them in cages that are close together so they can still see each other through the cage. In my case, I've got the ground pens, so something I have done, I'm not a huge fan of. I'll just go ahead and put the doe into the buck's cage. You don't want to go the other way around, because if the doe gets territorial, she'll attack the buck. but I have put the doe in with the buck, and if she's not in the mood right off, I'll just leave her in there for a week, and then it's kind of hoping that something has happened, and I'll take her out, separate her, put her back in her cage. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't, because I don't like guessing on did she or did she not actually get bred. So I typically like to have more control over it to where I actually see when it was done, have a specific date, and go from there. Now this one might sound funny, but a tip I have gotten from some other people is to take your doe for a drive, and somehow that just kind of disorients the doe enough to where when you get back home, you know, just do like a lap or two around the block, or just go for a little cruise, come back, put the doe in with the buck, and that's supposed to kind of disorient the doe enough to where she just kind of lets the buck have his way. I have tried this once and it did work, but it hasn't worked every time for me, so it is something to try if you want to go take a drive with your doe. You may want to consider cage size. I have had some people suggest that putting both rabbits into a big, more open, spacious pen has encouraged the doe to want to accept the male. I have not seen this to be the case with me. It just gives more room for the doe to run away, and then the buck decides he's not going to chase, and that's that. I have had more success with having the smaller cage because then the doe is forced to stay put, and if you have a buck that's a little lazier, then he's more willing to just keep trying and trying until she finally gives in. So in my experience, the smaller cage works. Some people have said the bigger pen works. Something to remember is that rabbits are most active in the morning and in the evening, so that's probably when you're going to want to try to breed them. Definitely probably not the middle of the day, because in most places that's when it's going to be hotter and warmer, and so of course they're not going to be as interested. So my suggestion is if you are having problems, try to do it in the morning when it's cool, or in the afternoon after the heat has disappeared and the rabbits are becoming active. Again, something you don't want to do is force the rabbits. If the doe's not interested, then, you know, how successful of a litter is she going to be having if you are able to get her to accept the buck? It's best to just encourage them to where they are able to lift on their own and have your buck get the job done there. If you straight up just have a stubborn doe that does not want to breed no matter what, then that's probably not a good doe to have. So I would suggest you would, you know, cull that doe from your flock of bunnies and invest in another one. Hopefully these tips were helpful and you found this video informative. There are certainly some other a little bit more off-the-wall tips out there, like trying to breed your rabbit before or on a full moon. I have not tried that one, but you could give it a shot. But these were the tips that more so made sense and we either have had success with or think that they do have potential. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.